hands on the floor.
Fakers! You got 1 hour left.
And you've got less.
I love it. Over the top, you know, all being distracted.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. My name's Paris Ferguson, internationally recognized cinematographer and director, with famous works that you might recognize, such as Violence and the music video to Monster that you may have heard of. Now that you know who I am, let me take you on a journey where we will go from the early evolution of film to its fathers in France to the invention of digital cinema.
And so the only more permanent form of digital storage I had available to me at the time was digital cassette.
And onto modern cinematography, with the fast, loud Hollywood we know today in works by directors such as Michael Bay. This is cinematography.
You're lying. I never hit you. You're tearing me apart, Lisa.
In the late 1880s, people began experimenting with the illusion of moving image. They used methods such as shining a light through photographs and then moving them quickly past the light to make it appear as if the image was moving. In fact, in 1887, a man by the name of Ottomar Auschwitz invented a disc-based projection system in which a light was shone through the first image of the disc and it was spun to project against a surface and move the image. This invention was called the electrochakoscope and was premiered in Berlin in November of 1894. But the true birth of moving image was fathered by an old debate. Do all 4 of a horse's hooves leave the ground in a full gallop? Well, in 1878, photographer Ewart Muybridge was hired by railroad baron Leanne Stafford in order to settle this debate. The subsequent photos proved that indeed all 4 of a horse's hooves did leave the ground in a full gallop. But more importantly, what did this do for the film industry? Well, it gave the people the idea of moving image. And not just as they seen in a sideshow in Berlin once, but a true concept that it could be a form of entertainment. Now that the world had the idea, it was up to 2 brothers in France to truly birth film. But before then, in 1888, Thomas Edison has a light bulb moment and filed a claim with the US Patent Office to create the kinetoscope and kinetograph, which will, in his words,
do for the eye what the phonograph does for the ear.
This was later developed by the Lumiere brothers in 1895 into the cinematographe, a 3-in-1 camera, developer and projector that quickly made Edison's peephole shows, as they were called, obsolete and started to popularize projected film. Now that the technology had been created, film took off with the Lumiere brothers' first few films starting in 1895. These only consisted of stationary shots, usually at some distance away from the subjects being filmed. But this was because they were mounted on a fixed tripod that prevented the camera from turning. But at the time, people were too blown away by the mere idea of film to think about things as complicated as the camera turning or even lighting. The popularization of film essentially gave birth to all film, as now people realized that film was a legitimate form of entertainment. This gave people the idea to start developing film and shape it into stories. Now, while I couldn't find any record of the first time a camera turned, it was probably when it was developed into its handheld version in 1888. Moving into the future of film, let's talk about movement. And I'm not talking about tracking shots, Dutch angles, or even camera rotation. I'm talking about really big movement. The rudimentary dolly and crane was invented by director Giovanni Pastroni in 1914 in order to achieve a series of slow, extended tracking shots, initially known as cabaret movements, for his film Cabaret. This would have affected the profession of film by allowing directors to go on and develop new and showed a new way to add emotions to shots and scenes. For example, having the crane high above the subject being filmed to make them feel small and insignificant. The invention of the dolly also allowed for directors to develop a new type of movement by pushing the dolly towards an object or person that they want the audience's attention to focus on, or pulling back to reveal an object or person in the background that was beforehand present but unnoticed by the audience. On backgrounds, let's talk about focus. Specifically, deep focus. Now, what is deep focus? Deep focus is a technique popularized by Chinese-American cinematographer James Wong Howe, who was born in 1899 in China, but migrated to the USA in the same year, and was responsible for over 100 films.
That's a big number!
He continued working until his death at the age of 77 in 1976. James was responsible for the popularization of deep focus, which allowed both the foreground and the background of a shot to be seen in focus at the same time. This would have revolutionized filmmaking at the time, as it allowed directors to do things such as have people have a conversation about a character in one room, while they're in shot and focus, but oblivious, adding more tension and emphasis on the words.
Yes! You failed your last saving roll. The demigod will eat your soul.
What the hell?
No, it's meant ETC, mate.
But this is technology and focus. What about real movement? Well, here's a director who took movement from a way to get point A to point B into a whole story in itself. Akira Kurosawa was born in March of 1910 in Tokyo, Japan, and died in his homeland of Tokyo on the 6th of September 1998. Kurosawa originally trained as a painter, which he used in his later life by storyboarding his films as full-scale paintings, although originally entering the film industry as an assistant director in 1936. He eventually made his directorial debut with Sanshiro Sugata in 1943. Kurosawa brought his own style of cinematography and storytelling into Japanese and Western cinema, with his Japanese adaptations of works by Western authors, such as William Shakespeare's work. However, his cinematic uniqueness was best displayed in his incredible use of movement in shots. He often utilised the movement of nature in the background of his shots, using wind, water, fire, smoke and snow primarily. This was used to draw the audience's eye, even when there was relatively little movement going on the screen. He also used the movement of objects and characters, often exaggerating their movement. For example, having angry characters stand bolt upright, upset characters cover their faces and cry, and nervous characters will pace left to right. He also told his actors to choose a particular movement, for example, a shrug, that throughout the film would make them more easily identifiable. He was one of the few directors who edited his own films, and would always cut to movement, either from movement to movement, or from a rare moment of stillness to lots of movement. He used three aspects to create layers of movement: character movement, natural movement, and camera movement, with the camera often taking longer shots that had lots of movement within them, transitioning from an over-the-shoulder shot to a long shot and to a tracking shot, all in the same take. He would rarely use the same type of shot twice, and if he did, he would often change the directive or perspective so that it felt different from the previous shots. Now that we've been through techniques and people, how was technology developing? Well, in 1975, Steve Sasson, working for Eastman Kodak, invented the world's first digital camera, which could capture up to 30 images on a cassette tape upon conception. This quickly gave rise to many commercial digital cameras released by Kodak for the general public. This technology was quickly developed for use in film, and in 1996, the film Rainbow was released and shot entirely on a digital camera. But how did this affect the industry? And what is the difference between film and digital? Well, digital footage is converted straight to a piece of technology, such as an SD card or USB stick. This can then be put on a computer and easily manipulated and edited. This essentially allows anybody to become a one-man film crew, as film footage is a much trickier beast. It's far more difficult to manipulate, as it itself is a physical thing. It requires expert people. It requires specialists to handle, store and create, let alone edit. This essentially means that digital films can be produced faster and far more cheaply, although to a slightly lower quality than can be seen in film. So how did this affect the industry? Well, now anybody could become a filmmaker. You could, I could, anybody who owns so much as a mobile phone could. This led to a massive increase in amateur films, film festivals, and the birth of massive amounts of YouTube videos that now had easy access to high quality video content. So, I've taken you through the past. Now we move into the modern age. Some of the latest technological developments have been cameras, such as the head rig for the film Hardcore Henry, and music videos by the same director, Stampede and Bad Motherfucker. The head rig was created as these productions wanted to use a first-person perspective throughout, but a regular GoPro was too shaky, and as the actors discovered, holding a GoPro in your mouth doesn't work very well. Some of the latest and most recognisable new cinematic techniques would be Michael Bay's Bayhem, in which he uses mass amounts of movement to confuse the audience, as the images on screen move too fast for the brain to process, but slow enough for the eye to see. as he also uses the three types of movement of character, camera, and nature all together, having the characters move one direction, the camera another, and the dust in the background a third direction. But Michael Bay is an expert at using the background, characters, and camera movement all together to create layers of overwhelming movement, which confuses the audience's eye. It keeps the audience's attention and adrenaline focused on the film in front of them. So I've taken you through the past. And into. So I've taken you through the past. And into the modern age. But what of the future? Well, you'll have to watch my films to find out. I'm Paris Ferguson, and this has been Cinematography.